Okay, it's day 123, a great day to negotiate a new agreement with Iran about nuclear power plant, or I guess a good day to cover up an old agreement with a plane crash. Or, hey, 123 is a good way to send terabytes to your friends in Pakistan or wherever, UAE. But our day 122 consisted of kind of following up on a couple of leads that we got that Q had dropped. Normally I don't do that a lot, but in this case we were following up also on Bethesda and the whole Rod Rosenstein indictment, and looking at kind of some similarities where he might be the one who's actually behind the Russians coming in and being directed. Given previous history, it seems like all the people that are doing the accusations are actually the conspirators, so why not stay with that? For some reason, these short 1-minute videos created such vitriol like I've never seen before. I would call my brother's stuff of me kind-hearted compared to what these videos generated. For some reason, other YouTube publishers just came out of the woodwork to attack every possible angle. Again, it's only a picture of an offshore rig, a company that's based in the Cayman Islands. I thought of, carpetbagging Mr. Romney. And again, when I definitely don't have a conclusion to make, I just do problem setup. So we go to the place, we film it, we talk a little bit about it, some of the research, to try to jog additional research. We try not to say we're an expert in anything. So anyway, there's two angles to the Q drop, and the reason why we're in Bethesda, we were also going to go to visit this place, which was Central Texas College, which was located inside Bethesda Naval Hospital. We've seen so much abuse and fraud with the 123 mail.house.gov folks bringing in fake doctors and these quarter-weight drugs, and there's such abuse. We thought, well, hey, is it coming out of this Central Texas College quartermaster program? And that is in Bethesda, Maryland. So again, the only reason we're there is to just follow up on very odd coincidences, like somebody from Bethesda, Maryland having exactly the same name as the Parkland shooter, who leaves Bethesda, Maryland and then goes to Parkland. Okay? And that is obviously Nicholas Jacob Cruz. So that's why we're there. Nicholas Jacob Cruz was at Central Texas College. We're just showing a picture of it, not trying to say that we know everything about it. Okay, so let's follow up quickly on this offshore rig idea. And I thought, well, this, if you don't remember the Rosenstein memorandum or the indictment, they talk about interfering in the elections, but two of the Russians actually created a 9/11 event in 2014 in this little town called Centreville, Louisiana. So we thought, well, maybe first of all, since a lot of events happen on 9/11, maybe it's an honorific to the oil industry. The first offshore rig was in 1963, October 1963, right around September 11th maybe was when the first one got sunk. We thought maybe that was an honorific to George Bush or something like that, since he did the NWO speech on 9/11, all the other 9/11 stuff. Maybe that's why. And it turns out this is very close to Centreville, Louisiana. As a matter of fact, it's probably line of flight is the closest place. Okay, so we started looking at offshore oil rigs, and here's a kind of a map, and it kind of goes chronologically in terms of depth. So you start out with the shallow rigs here. There's all these oil company drilling rig companies right here near Centreville in this little bay. And then they moved out on this shallow shelf, on this shallow water here, and then they finally got out here a little bit later in the 2001s, culminating in the deepest one ever drilled by BP here at Deepwater Horizon. And I had speculated, I had said that there was a space between the 12-mile international law area and then the 40, 50 miles out stuff. And I was right. It turned out that Deepwater Horizon's about 41 miles out. Okay, and these are little cities. I mean, these are a great place. I mean, you could basically, if you were a child trafficker, you could shuttle kids between all these places and just have a rotation. And there's enough of these rigs out there, you could meet someone out here in 12-mile international waters and just have a route delivery system there. So I just wanted to follow up on that. If you don't remember the story, it's Columbia Chemicals plant hoax. Now, to me, if I was doing an indictment, and two of the Russians I named in the indictment for going to Ted Cruz's barbecue and saying somehow that they were, a part of, an NRA gun club or something. I think this is much more significant. What you're talking about, a toxic plume going over from a plant explosion, going over New Orleans, a major U.S. city. To me, this is a 9/11 or a 9/11 event. It happened on 9/11. I mean, why wouldn't that be in the indictment? So that's the first question. He names the two Russians in his thing. Did he overlook this? Did he overlook this? I just don't understand. And then the second question would be, if you didn't hear about this, or if you did, what did you do about it? You mean you just let the Russians go ahead for another 2 years to affect the election after a 9/11 hoax if you knew who they were? It just doesn't make any sense. This was the number 3 person in that internet agency. This was the number 3 person, that Krylova. So anyway, if you hadn't seen it before, this is Centreville. This is that little Bay Area that I showed. And there's all these drill rigging companies. I just picked Diamond because Diamond Shamrock was kind of the CIA recruiter at Miami. They'd start you off a couple of years out in some remote South American country or out on an oil platform and kind of get you used to horrible treatment of other people because they're somehow subservient to you, and then they would move you into being an agent if you were promising. So I obviously didn't do that. But anyway, the other piece of Centreville is interesting is this closeness to Huma. Huma was a place for kind of civil defense, and the Army, the DoD, built a huge cavern here, a huge tunnel and area for caching of food and weapons. And I thought, well, why wouldn't you use that for drugs and weapons? If you were staging, a revolution, let's say in Venezuela, why wouldn't you still stage that stuff there? And when you were moving all the stuff, let's say you loaded up about 30 trucks, in the dead of night, and you want to get them over to the New Orleans to ship out, why wouldn't you stage something over here in Centreville to get all the police and fire and so forth heading out that way while you go the other way? I don't know, maybe a diversion. So maybe it's an honorific, maybe a diversion, who knows. But there is a colossal facility here that's a tunnel facility. Again, Rod Rosenstein, why wouldn't you mention this in the indictment? Just boggles the mind. So real quickly, the company for that chemical plant that it's called Columbia Chemicals, I'm not making that up, is Burla Carbon, and it uses this carbon black, and it comes from tires and stuff like that, as well as used oil. And it is an interesting energy recovery process, and it's a gigantic firm. Again, based in Brazil. I'm not saying it's a boys in Brazil type operation, but they are huge in China. They have huge growth now in China. Interesting. So anyway, the other thing I speculated was maybe there was a VA motive to this. VA is moving from 9 regions to these 5 regions, and I had speculated that maybe the representative down there who had left his job 4 days earlier was going to be the new guy that they're going to put ahead as the head of this region. There's been so many fake doctors, so much quarter weight medicine by the quartermasters into the VA system, such a target. $1 trillion or a couple of $1 trillion in unfunded mandates and subsidies in the future. It's such a huge target. Why would you do this? Why would you make Colorado the head or over Texas and Louisiana in these 5 regions? It just scared the bejesus out of me that you would have the CIA in charge of anything. That's the last place I would put the headquarters. So we'll have to see if this guy ends up being that guy. Well, we don't know yet. But and the VA keeps on putting out, puff pieces about infographics and so forth that just don't ring true. The facilities are obviously being used by people coming in from other countries. They're not being used by veterans. Veterans wouldn't have the wait time that they do. And all the fake graphs and fake reports that you can push out don't really answer the fundamental question until you actually, and here's where, I do think people should hang. You don't give a vet, I remember my dad just trying to schedule in just the back pain he had. You take that away from a veteran after they've gotten wounded or something overseas, that there's just no excuse for that. The Veterans Administration has to get rid of skulking, and they have to have firings. At least 10,000 people need to be fired from the VA. Just 10,000 people sent to retirement. It has to be completely overhauled. This is even more serious of a problem, in my opinion, than the FBI, than the JTTF, excuse me. which could conceivably, you could just clean them all out and just get everybody who Andrew McCabe ever brought in or promoted gone. Maybe that's the solution. So, finally, I'll say, again, I don't say these things to create such hatred, but people just, when I talked about robotic mining and how they could possibly use satellites for robotic mining, the incredible vitriol that came out of that. I'm sorry, but hey, I said it, and then a day later, somebody sent me a thing. Yeah, Wiener's involved with this Northbridge, and they have a thing called O3B mPower. mPower is the small nuclear design that came from Sandia Labs in Los Alamos, and there was another one, S-Star, that came from Lawrence Livermore. So, again, folks, I'm just putting it out there and laying out the problem. And my statistics teacher in high school, she used to say, if you don't know how to start, draw a picture. At least start drawing a picture and put the information up on the whiteboard. Then you can attack it later. So please, let's not kill the babies before they at least have their, say their first word. And we'll go at the next one a little bit later today.